said, every child is an artist. The problem is remaining one once we grow up. Welcome to Artin with Barrie. I'm Barrie Foster, and today I'm presenting my chalk pastel workshop. I'm first going to cover the materials, then show you a step-by-step mini orange, show you examples of my work, and then I'm going to take you through a landscape, a real simple landscape. So let's get started. There are three types of chalk pastels. Now, first of all, I wanted to mention chalk pastels are very different from oil pastels. They are not compatible. Chalk pastels are pigment and binder, mostly gum arabic, I believe. And oil pastels have an oil binder, and you don't use them at the same time or together. There are soft pastels which have very little binder in them. I'm going to show you a few of the sets that I have. This is my set of Koss soft pastels. They do come in square sticks. I have two sets of Rembrandt Pastels. Now these are round sticks. The Rembrandts and Koss, I love them both very much. The Koss are a little more affordable than the Rembrandts. I also have Munvo and Gallery, and these are far more affordable. Then we have hard pastels. Hard pastels generally come in squares, not round sticks. And I have a wonderful set of new pastels, Prismacolor Premier new pastels. And these all have a number on the side of them, which corresponds to the color. And so when you run out of one of those pastels, you can just order that particular color. And that's how a lot of these sets come. These are much harder. They have a lot more binder in them. I also have two sets of Master's Touch pastels. One's in grays. One of them is in, they call this Brilliant Colors. I haven't used these very much. If you're a fine detail person, you want to use more of the hard pastels because they make a sharper line. Then the third type of pastel is the pastel pencil, and the hardness of those lies somewhere in between the hard and the soft pastels. And I have some here. I've got some in this little case, and then I have a Stabilo kit right there of them. Now, with the pastel pencils, you have to be careful when you sharpen them because they're very delicate and they can break easily. Some people prefer to sharpen them with a knife. I sharpen them in my pencil sharpener. I've not had any problems, but just be aware of that. These are also good for fine detail. So that covers pastels. Pastels are very compatible with charcoal. As a matter of fact, that's what I use for doing my underdrawing, either a vine or a willow charcoal. I have both here. And like I said, they're very compatible, and you can erase this very easily once it's on the paper. And I'll be showing you that today. So I'm going to go around here. Oh, this thing here. This thing is called a Malt Stick. I made this one myself with the help of my husband. It's a dowel rod with a cotton ball and some felt and some string. And when we're going to go back to the board here, But I'm going to show you that when you are applying the pastel to your painting, sometimes your hand will touch it. And so what this is for is you place it on your painting, and then you can get in close with your hand, and so that keeps it from getting all over you. Some people use them, not everyone does, and I don't use them in every painting. So around here I'm going to cover some papers. You can get a grayscale pad of paper, and it comes in different colors. Basically what you want is something with a tooth, because that chalk pastel has to grab onto something. You can also use watercolor paper, at least the cold press, because that has some texture to it. Here's a charcoal pad of paper. This is all light color, kind of an ivory color. This doesn't have as much tooth, but it does have enough. There are also pastel pads of paper. They come in different sizes, and again, different colors. This one I've used a lot. The paper I like to use the best is actually, I'm going to show it to you in a few minutes, is Color Fix sanded paper, and it comes in different colors and different sizes. And I usually get mine from the catalog stores. And they have put a slurry of like sandpaper on top of it, real thick paper. And again, that stuff comes in different colors, and I absolutely love it. It's like magic when I start painting with chalk pastels. And that's what I'm going to be demoing on today. Here are some more supplies. This is a blending stomp. These come in different thicknesses. And this is for people who like to blend, especially if you're doing fine detail work. I'm not a fine detail painter, but a lot of you out there are. And so these are very, very helpful. Workable Fixative. It's called Workable because you can spray it on, let it dry, and then work on top of it. And that comes in handy when you're working with your blues and your yellows. Because sometimes if you're putting a blue on top of a yellow or vice versa, sometimes you're going to come out with green, and that might not be what you wanted. So halfway through your painting or so, you may want to spray it with this, let it dry, and then continue on. Now, a lot of people have said, oh, I've heard hairspray works. I've heard that also. But the problem with hairspray is it's going to become yellow over time. You don't want that. The Workable Fixative that you get from the art supply stores is what's known as archival, which means it's going to last a very long time. It's not going to turn yellow. The other materials you're probably going to want are good painter's masking tape, baby wipes. I go through a lot of baby wipes. Chalk pastels is probably the messiest of all of the painting mediums, but I don't mind that. I love it. And then you want paper towels, but not just any paper towel. You're going to want Viva paper towels. They cost a little bit more, but the way that they're structured really takes the pastel off the paper when you need it. So now we're going to go back to the board, and I'm going to show you really basic how you apply this. I did this one actually a number of years ago for a class that I did, and I find it very useful. Here in the first section, I've done my chalk pastel. This is not color fixed paper, by the way. It's one of those pastel pads of paper. So it has some tooth to it. It has a nice tooth to it. Anyways, in the first square, I've drawn the circle for my orange, and I've put down this color here. I don't know the name of it. They're not named in there. It's just that red. Number 2, I've added an orange color. Number 3, I added a brighter red on top. And number 4, I came in with a lot more colors, all the rest of them. And I'm going to grab a pastel right now and demo a few of the strokes that you can do. Most of this is done with what's called a linear stroke, and a linear stroke is basically using the edge. Let me grab another one of these, excuse me. Here I've broken this piece, a piece like this, into a smaller piece. Now I'm going to show you a side stroke. See the difference there? So if you're like me, I like to paint kind of quickly. I love the side strokes, and one of the nice things is you'll see underneath the color of the paper bleeds through. That's that tooth working. So when you choose what you're going to be painting, look carefully at the color of the paper. It's not like a canvas where it's white or a watercolor piece of paper that's white. You get to choose the color underneath, which is kind of cool. So in this last one, I have used mostly linear strokes, and I've done them in a diagonal manner. What I wanted to point out to you is that underneath, I've used a lot of blue and some, a little bit of black, but a lot of blue, because that's where the light is not there. So it makes it cool and it makes it recede. Now I'm going to show you some examples of my work over time. This is an early one I did of a still life in much the same manner, mostly linear strokes in a diagonal manner. Here's one that I did not too long ago. This was on black color fix paper. This is from a photo that I took behind my house, and it was a new style for me. It was something new I was exploring as far as my technique. And I really loved this, and I loved it so much that I ordered a bunch more of black color fix paper from one of the art supply catalogs online, and it hasn't made it here yet, but I do have some blue color fix paper we're going to be using today. Two other recent works I've done. As I'm getting older, my hands are shakier, my eyesight's not as good. So I don't find it easy for me to do fine detail. As a matter of fact, when I paint, I like to say, what if? What if? So I'm getting older, I'm getting bolder. I absolutely love this painting. And it didn't take me very long to do. Probably, all in all, less than 2 hours in 2 takes. Another one I did shortly after that one is this one. And what I do is, I've been collecting crockery for years, and I love setting up these fun still lifes, and I have a lot of plastic fruit I bought at the dollar store. So I find these to be very fun, very freeing, and again, this was probably less than 2 hours altogether, but I get lost in them, and I just love it. So I'm going to show you how to make this kind of magic happen. So I brought my Rembrandt pastels and my Cost pastels over here. That's what I'm going to be using today to create this painting. But what I wanted to do was go over how I did this other painting, and this is how I do all my paintings. I print a photo and I fold it into thirds and thirds again. Then I take it and I take white pastel over it, and that creates my grid lines. Then I put the same grid lines on my paper. And as you can see in the finished product, they're gone. Well, that's what I've done here. Only in this one, I've also put the center lines in. And I used one of my pieces of charcoal. What I wanted to point out is you don't want your center of interest to be in the middle of the paper. And in this photo, about at the halfway line is where that line where the grass meets the base of the trees. I don't like that. And so I have to make the decision to make it higher or lower. So when I look at this painting, I see a lot in there, and one of the reasons what attracted me to this photo is it was taken at 6:30 in the morning and the long, cool shadows. So I want to keep a lot of that in. So I think what I'm going to do, but I also want the sky and I want it to be a little more balanced. So I think I'm going to make that line just below the halfway mark. So I'm taking my trusty paper towels and I'm going to make that line just below. So I'm going to put this across here. Now keep in mind, I don't draw much. I really don't. When I first started out with watercolor, I always traced. I blew up my photos and I traced onto the watercolor paper. But over time I have learned to draw. And I believe that you don't need to know how to draw to create really good art. So here, I've got this tree here, and you can see where it goes across right at that cross there, right in here. So I'm going to put that tree here. I like that tree. So I need to come make it a little bit up here more. You can change this really easily. And then we've got the background of the trees here. Trees here and here. So what you always want to do is as you're painting, you want to step back and look at it. Well, I kind of like that, so I've got to do a little erasing here. This is where some of the magic happens. It pulls it right off. So I'm going to take out some of these lines and just a very gentle touch. And I actually want to make this a little bit taller so it doesn't seem so squatty. Make it to have an interesting shape. That way we know this line is below the halfway mark, and this tree is going to be probably our center of interest. We don't want our center of interest in the middle of the paper. Just as on this one, this tree was on the left, this tree is going to be on the right. I do see some fencing in there. We can take that out later. Just get that out off it a little bit. get some more of this charcoal off. Now I'm going to begin. I think I'm done. I'm going to sign it, and how I've been signing my pastels is with the pastel pencil. And keep in mind that when you sign them, it's kind of like watercolor. You're going to be putting a mat over this, so don't just sign it in one of the bottom corners. You don't want to do that. You want to go about 2 or 3 inches inside, because I think I'm probably going to mat this somewhere around here. So I have a indigo blue pastel pencil, and I'm going to sign it here, and I sign it B. Foster. Now, let me explain my madness as I painted this. I used mostly side strokes, and I built it up. And as I used a pastel, you often saw me wiping it, because when you use the pastel, it picks up the color around it. So you're constantly wiping. And you get very messy. And one of the things you do not want to do, we have the laundry room right on the other side here. Through that door is the laundry room. And one day I was doing laundry, and I was doing the white towels. So the buzzer dinged, and I went to change them out, pulled all the towels out and put them in the dryer, and about halfway through I was like, oh, that doesn't work. So I ended up rewashing the towels. I don't mind getting dirty. I get it all over my face. It's part of the journey. It's part of the fun of it. But anyways, getting back to the painting, I did mostly side strokes, and I built up my colors, and you see that I went back and forth and back and forth. So I didn't have yellow just in the beginning. I picked it up several times. You have to stand back and look at it. And I like a lot of movement, so that's why I put the wavy linear strokes in as well. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that I used all the colors pretty much in all the places. Most people see skies as blue, but what I do is I have blue everywhere in the painting. I have it in the trees, I have it in the grass, and I have it in the sky. And when you see the sky, it should reflect what's underneath it. And so that's why I put in the green, the blue, the white. I added the white last. And I added the light blue towards the end, because I tend to get the darker colors in first and go over it with what it needs. I look at the white kind of like an icing on the cake. This one was fun to do. It was fairly simple. It was fairly quick. The nice thing about landscapes is the proportions. You don't have to worry about, is that tree too big or too small according to the photo. One of the things I always say is the photo is just your beginning point. You have fun creating the painting, and this is your ending point. So this is your journey. This is your art journey. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you in art class.